Okay, if I can encourage members who are leaving the chamber to do so as quickly and as quietly as possible, as we move to the final item of business this evening, which is a members' business debate on motion 20338 in the name of John Mason on Nature Champions Initiative. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put. I invite members wishing to participate to press the request to speak buttons, and I call on John Mason to open the debate around 7 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer, and thanks to all those who have supported the motion and those who have enabled today's debate and who are going to take part in the debate this afternoon. Can I also welcome, I believe, to the gallery, representatives of some of the organisations, including that support Nature Champions, including especially Scottish Environment Link, who coordinate everything, and I think perhaps the Scottish Raptor Study Group, which covers 8 MSPs who champion raptors. The Nature Champion Initiative has become incredibly popular among MSPs, and there is an amazing range of flora, fauna and habitats which now have a member speaking for them. I believe 105 MSPs are nature champions. So I would like to thank Scottish Environment Link, Andrew Marks in particular, and their 25 supporting organisations, including RSPB, John Muir Trust, Scottish Wildlife Trust, WWF and the others. There is sometimes a theory that urban politicians like myself should stay out of matters affecting rural areas. However, a lot of us do love all parts of Scotland, including cities, towns, rural areas and maritime environment, and that is the way it should be. So looking at the list of MSPs and their adopted species, I saw that Cocab Stewart has the corncrake, which is not common in central Glasgow, and Anas Sarwar has upland birchwoods, which also I have not seen in the city. Therefore, it is absolutely a good thing that we all take an interest in all different parts of the country. Personally, contrary to popular belief, I am not the species champion for the Soay sheep on St Kilda, although maybe I should have taken on as an additional group, despite the fact there's actually too many of them rather than too few. My own species is actually the kestrel, which, while not in the most endangered category, has been in decline over a number of years. We used to see them regularly hovering over motorway verges around Glasgow, but I fear we see them less often now. If colleagues like Fiona Hislop has blanket bogs or Jamie Halcrow-Johnson has Caledonian pinewoods, I guess they do not move around very much, and you can go and visit them whenever you like. However, for others of us, like the kestrel and perhaps Martin Whitfield with the adder or Rhoda Grant with the wildcat, they can be quite elusive, and you have to get to specific places at specific times to see them up close. In the case of the kestrel, I've been out in 2 different years with a team watching them ring young birds, which can only be done at a certain time when the birds are not too small and not too large. Kestrel numbers in Scotland are down some 67% since 1995, and the reasons are not entirely clear, although probably including changes to farming practices. Numbers do fluctuate anyway from year to year, depending on the availability of their main food source, which is voles. But it does seem to be partly geographical too, in that there might be alternative food sources like baby starlings available in some areas but not in others. Again, the revival in numbers of pine martens means another predator of kestrel eggs and chicks. However, I do not think pine martens actually have a champion, so I'm not blaming anyone here today. But maybe in retrospect, I should have chosen something which was easier to find, like Colin Beattie with rivers or Emma Harper with ponds and small lochs. They do not move around quite as much as kestrels do. And then, of course, there are some tricky situations when we have some of the species with a champion actually eating the species of another champion, such as Claire Baker's puffins eating Willie Rennie's sand eels. Then again, you might say that some species are a bit more exciting than others. Mark Ruskell with the white-tailed eagle, well, that is absolutely tremendous. But Mercedes Villalba has road verges, and I think I would need some convincing that I could get excited about that. So one of the purposes of today's debate was to re-emphasise the importance of this Nature Champions scheme, especially as we head towards the end of this session of Parliament. And quite a number of MSPs are either retiring or will not come back for other reasons. Hopefully, for those champions who do return, they will continue to support species or habitat, either their existing one or perhaps a new one. And then both they and the other Link member organisations will hopefully have a real push to get the new MSPs signed up. In one sense, the question is why an MSP would not take on this role. If over 100 of us have, what has happened to the other 25 or so? And I realise that perhaps the Cabinet Secretary cannot take species because she might be seen to be biased in some ways, but there are others. I was intrigued to see in the SSPCA's election manifesto that 87% of people in Scotland now identify as animal lovers. That is good, but my question is why are the other 13% not animal lovers? But the good news for these 13%, and that could be about 16 MSPs, is that you can still be a nature champion and take on something like Graham Simpson's ash or Carol Mochan's kelp forests, which are not animals. And of course, there are some species which would clearly benefit from having a nature champion but do not have one. An example would be badgers, about which I had an email the other day. Apparently 65% of land in Scotland is completely devoid of badger presence. So I think they do need a champion, and hopefully that can be changed. However, new MSPs will have to be quick if they want to support a popular species. We all know that Christine Graham regularly grabs the seat behind the First Minister each Thursday so as to be on TV, and she has also grabbed a very popular species in the golden eagle. So I thank Link and their member organisations for setting all this up. I thank colleagues for all their work and interest in this subject, as well as their support for today's debate, and I look forward to hearing members' contributions, even including Christine Graham on the golden eagle. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mason. We may not hear about the verges unless Ms Fialba changes her mind and presses her button. As I've advised members wishing to participate in this debate, as Mr Mason rightly anticipated, there's a lot of interest in participating. In order to allow everybody a chance to contribute, speaking time allocations have been reduced to 3 minutes. I'd be grateful if you could stick to that. And I call first David Torrance, to be followed by Douglas Ross. Up to 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and my thanks to John Mason for securing the debate this evening. It is a pleasure to speak today on an initiative that has quite quietly transformed the way Parliament engages with Scotland's natural world. As someone who has proudly taken on the mantle of Seagrass Champion, I can attest to the power of Nature Champions initiative in helping to grow our understanding of a natural heritage that we are all entrusted to protect. When I was first approached to become Seagrass Champion, I didn't fully appreciate the scale of its significance or complexity of ecosystem it supports. Scotland is home to two true species, eelgrass and dwarf eelgrass, and together they form underwater meadows that are among the most remarkable and most threatened habitats in our marine environment. What began as a title soon became a genuine interest and fascination. Seagrass meadows are ecologically powerhouses. They provide essential habitats for countless species, helping us to move towards our national target of halting biodiversity loss by 2030. They shelter rare species, and such as native oysters, stabilise the seafloor, improve water quality, and play a significant role in carbon capture, storing carbon at rates that exceed many well-known land habitats. Their contribution to a healthier coastal ecosystem is profound, and their loss would be felt far beyond the shoreline. Yet, despite their importance, seagrass meadows have suffered dramatic historic loss. Across the UK, up to 92% have disappeared over the past century, and that is why the work of Restoration Forth is so vital. Restoration Forth, launched in 2022, is a community-driven effort to restore seagrass meadows and European flat oysters in the Firth of Forth. Delivered by a coalition including Project Seagrass, WWF, the Ecology Centre, Nature Scot and others, it has already achieved remarkable progress. To date, more than 210,000 seagrass seeds have been planted across the Forth. Volunteers and project partners have also transplanted 880 seagrass cores, with additional trials showing expansion of up to 500% in some of the monitored sites. It is great to see that over 3,000 people taking part in events, workshops, seed processing sessions, restoration activities, and schools and community groups and local volunteers have become custodians of their own coastline, building skills and forging connections that will last long beyond the project's timeline. I had the privilege of joining this work firsthand on several occasions. One memorable morning, I found myself on a freezing cold beach with a group of volunteers learning the fine art of injecting seagrass seeds into sediment using dispenser injection seed technique. I now pass the restoration site every morning in a train into Parliament, peering out the window like a proud and slightly over-invested gardener checking whether the seedlings have sprouted. Another highlight for me was joining a guided snorkelling session with Restoration Forth, the Ecology Centre and WWF Scotland. Experiencing the hidden world of the Forth beneath the surface was nothing short of spectacular. It brought home in no way a briefing paper ever could. richness of life that depends on these meadows and the urgency of protecting them. In conclusion, Presiding Officer, as we look ahead to elections in May, I want to encourage all MSPs, both those returning after election and those elected for the first time, to take up the role of a nature champion, because it is much more than just a title. It is a commitment to understanding, advocating for and celebrating the species and habitats that make Scotland unique.
Thank you. I'm going to call Douglas Ross to be followed by Sarah Boyce. Up to 3 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. And can I congratulate John Mason on securing this debate and delivering what I thought was an excellent speech, detailing just some of the species species that members are champions for in this current Parliament. And it reminded me actually of species champions from the past, because one of my predecessors for the Highlands and Islands, Mary Scanlon, was the species champion for the freshwater pearl mussel. And I know she did a lot of work for that species and continues to take a great interest. So, like Mr Mason, I'm not coming back to this chamber, but I will take a strong interest in the species champion for which I am involved, and that's the bottlenose dolphin. And I found out when I was appointed the species champion for the bottlenose dolphin that they are intelligent, inquisitive and playful. So I can only assume that 128 other MSPs were offered this and refused the bottlenose dolphin, and they went to the final MSP left to take that one up. But I was delighted when I was asked to be species champion for the bottlenose dolphin, because it gave me an opportunity, which I readily accepted, to go to the Scottish Dolphin Centre at Spey Bay. And they do incredible work there, encouraging people to understand more about bottlenose dolphins. They are long life. Many of the females live up to 50 years or more in the Murray Firth. I went on a shore watch as the species champion. I knew at the time, when I was being pictured by the local press, that an image of me, at the time I was leader of the Scottish Conservatives, with binoculars looking out to the sea, was going to be used by some as Tory leader looks for votes. I don't know what species Russell Finlay is now the champion for, but I would advise him to be very careful of photo opportunities such as that, and it was understandably reported in the way I expected. But I was still keen to do it, because the Shore Watch project is a great one to get people involved. You can go down there for 15, 30 minutes, do a shore watch, and then go back in and record the numbers there. Bottlenose dolphins also attract people to our area. The species actually generates about £4 million to the Murray economy and the wider economy along the Murray Firth, because people want to come and see them, if possible, get up close with a number of the tours that go on, but of course not too close to disturb their habitat. And there are a number of issues that are concerning those of us who are very passionate about this species and their habitat being disturbed. In 3 minutes I don't have time to go over that, but being a species champion allows me to press this issue both in Parliament and out with. And I would say in my final seconds, this is a scheme I would highly recommend to incoming MSPs. It does give you a greater knowledge of a species you may otherwise not be familiar with, and it gives you an opportunity to stand up in Parliament to take part in a debate which I think will be very consensual, because we all want to see the scheme continue to go from strength to strength. And I will be looking at the next Parliament to see who gets not just the bottlenose dolphin, but many of the other species that have been mentioned tonight. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Mr Ross. I now call Sarah Boyce to be followed by Ariane Burgess in 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I also want to thank John Mason for bringing this important motion to the Chamber tonight. And before the debate, I was getting inundated with colleagues telling me what species they champion. I'm also proud to have been a nature champion, because it's an initiative which genuinely brings nature to life for us all. It makes us more aware of what's happening in our constituencies, what species are under pressure, what habitats need support, and where communities are also stepping up to support local wildlife. I want to thank Scottish Environment Link and its members for consistently campaigning for nature and for educating us all on the issues that really matter. And just 2 weeks ago, Parliament passed the Natural Environment Act, a significant step forward in strengthening protections for Scotland's biodiversity. And during this process, I was proud to bring many amendments to the table, some of which even got passed. And I was especially happy to support the amendment adding swift bricks to new buildings. Just one example of how small, targeted interventions can support species under pressure. And in fighting for nature, I've always stressed that nature is not a luxury. It's vital to our health and well-being. It contributes to the quality of our food, the strength of our tourism sector and the resilience of our economy. And if we're serious about tackling our climate and nature emergencies, we've got to invest in our natural environment and the communities who care for it, because a natural, healthy world makes our communities more resilient. And as John Mason highlighted, in every community, in urban and rural Scotland, people benefit directly from action to protect biodiversity, whether through urban green spaces, community gardens or local wildlife corridors in our urban areas. And as the nature champion for the large heath butterfly, I want to thank Butterfly Conservation Scotland, because I've now seen firsthand just how closely this species is linked to the health of Scotland's bogs. It is a true bog specialist, thriving in our upland blanket bogs and lowland raised bogs, habitats for which Scotland is internationally important. The large heath butterfly is an indicator species. Its caterpillars rely on cotton grass and the adults feed on cross-leaved heath. So when the butterfly is doing well, it tells us those habitats are in good condition. But large heath butterflies could also be under threat from climate change. So championing the large heath butterfly has shown me how vital peatland restoration is, not just for one species, but for carbon storage, flood mitigation, biodiversity and community resilience. More than 100 MSPs have taken part in this initiative, and I welcome the fact we're going to see it relaunched next term, because it gives new MSPs the chance to advocate for our threatened species and habitats. I hope everybody will keep campaigning together, because this could not be more important. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Ms Boyack. I now call Ariane Burgess to be followed by Beatrice Wishart. Around 3 minutes.
I am delighted to speak in this debate and to add my wholehearted support for the Nature Champions initiative. This parliamentary session began at a strange and distant time where we were all still socially distancing and still working out how to be together. And the very first Nature Champions meeting was online, but many of us were there. And even through a screen, it brought us together with a shared sense of purpose. The way we were introduced to the initiative felt like, well, MSP, of course you would be a champion. And it reminded me then, as it does now, that nature connects us all. I was given the Eurasian beaver and the aspen, one of the beaver's favourite trees to dine on. And I love the evolution of the initiative in recognising that species don't exist in isolation. The beaver needs the aspen and other trees and bodies of water. In turn, beavers restore wetlands, slow the flow and help alleviate flooding. Together, they form part of a living web, an ecosystem that ultimately supports us. Being the Beaver Champion and the Aspen Champion has forged numerous connections for me. With the Scottish Wildlife Trust, I visited Knapdale, where the first beaver reintroduction trials began in 2009, and I'd actually been there in 2010, and it was a privilege to return and see how beavers had transformed the landscape. More water, more life, more biodiversity, and it reminded me that this is not just about seeing a species, it's about seeing its impact. On another occasion, I witnessed the team at the Argyll Beaver Centre, their tremendous enthusiasm engaging so many visitors in the wonder of beavers and helping people understand why they matter, and also, actually to Douglas Ross's point, contributing to the local economy. Since then, beaver translocations within Scotland have opened up, and beavers are flourishing, but we must ensure that those facing lethal control are moved to safety. And I want to give my great thanks to Beaver Trust for their vital work in that, and alongside the support from the Scottish Beaver Group and the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland. Across the chamber, I have loved seeing colleagues delight in their species, and from freshwater pearl mussels to red squirrels. And with 1 in 9 species at risk of national extinction, this initiative truly matters. So I wish to extend my thanks to Scottish Environment Link to conceiving of this idea and creating this wonderful forum for us to come together around. Perhaps the next step is a debate in this chamber, not with us talking about our species, but with us all speaking from the perspective of our species and how we all interact with each other. And I think there was a humorous moment about one eating another and things like that. But let's get that conversation going. When we champion nature, we champion Scotland's future.
Thank you. I now call Beatrice Wishart to be followed by Colin Beattie in 3 minutes, please.
Thanks, Presiding Officer, and thank you too to John Mason for bringing this important debate to the Chamber. And thank you to the Scottish Environment Link for all their work and for their briefing, highlighting the stark level of ongoing nature loss in Scotland, including that 1 in 9 species are at risk of national extinction. There's much going on in the world of politics, but we should never forget that we face the twin challenges of the climate and biodiversity loss crises. What a great initiative it is to have 100 MSPs champion Scotland's threatened and iconic species and habitats, and it spawned similar programmes in the UK Parliament, Welsh Senedd and within Scottish communities and local authorities. I'm proud to be the MSP Nature Champion for Orca. Presiding Officer, as you'll know, Liam MacArthur champions the Scottish primrose, and I think that the difference in and between those two species reflects the diversity of the natural world in the Northern Isles. Often referred to as killer whales, orca are in fact members of the dolphin family. David Attenborough's Wild Isles series began with stunning scenes of a pod of orca off Shetland. None of that would have been possible without the keen eyes of local people armed with a WhatsApp group to alert the production crew of sightings. There was another sighting of orcas off Shetland only yesterday, with wonderful images of them on social media for those of us who missed them. I've been privileged to work with WDC, Whale and Dolphin Conservation, and like Douglas Ross, I've taken part in shore watches. This provides citizen science data, allowing expert workshops to identify global whale and dolphin habitats in need of protection. In 2022, I was especially proud to have won the MSP Nature Champion of the Year award following my involvement in the campaign to stop at-sea explosions. Orca and other marine mammals can be severely injured in shock waves produced by detonations of unexploded ordnance on the seabed. Changes to the law to use low-impact methods to neutralise these weapons better protects marine animals, but more work is required to change the law on noise limits which can cause harm to whale and dolphins. The rush to use sea spaces to provide transition to renewable energy can impact seabirds and ocean creatures as well as the fishing sector. The infrastructure being constructed also means an increase in noise pollution, such as pile driving, needed for offshore wind turbines. So to conclude, Presiding Officer, we need measures to ensure we maintain our native species and habitats. Nature champions are a great way to raise awareness, and I wish the incoming 2026 cohort of MSP Nature champions well in this endeavour.
Thank you, Ms Wishart. Had I known you were going to mention the Scottish primrose, I probably would have given you another 3 minutes, but there you go. Colin Beattie next, to be followed by Alexander Burnett.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I'd like to thank John Mason for bringing this important debate forward to the Chamber. The Nature Champion initiative encourages members of the Scottish Parliament to champion threatened and iconic species and habitats, raising awareness and promoting action to protect our environment. I'm proud to be involved in this initiative as a champion for rivers, and my contribution will focus on this area, why they matter and why they need our urgent attention. The Parliament should be proud that over 100 MSPs are currently nature champions, and debates like this are essential to highlight the importance of environmentalism. That context matters because the scale of the challenge facing our natural environment is stark. Today's motion references a worrying report that 1 in 9 species are at risk of national extinction. More work must be done, and initiatives like the Nature Champion are a step in the right direction. And that's why I'm proud to be the champion for rivers, one of the most vital parts of our ecosystem and one we must recover to reverse biodiversity loss. At the local level, I see both the challenges and opportunities for improvement first-hand. I currently convene the Esk River Improvement Group in my constituency, where we bring together stakeholders to investigate how we can further improve and advance the quality of water for river users and wildlife. And that work has only reinforced for me how central rivers are as biodiversity hotspots across Scotland, and their huge role in supporting a range of insects, fish, birds and mammals. One often overlooked part of that picture is freshwater invertebrates. Invertebrates are an essential part of the ecology of our freshwater system. They play a vital role in maintaining water quality, breaking down organic matter and balancing the food web. Freshwater invertebrates depend on a healthy river to survive and are sensitive to pollution, shifts in temperature and habitat degradation. This also makes them useful as an early warning system, indicating a river's health. But unfortunately, our rivers are under threat, and it's important we understand the impact of these in order to tackle them. On top of these long-standing pressures, climate change is now accelerating the damage being done. Extreme weather events alter rainfall patterns, and rising temperatures are putting our freshwater ecosystem at risk. These concerns don't just affect wildlife, they also increase risks for communities. Flooding is a growing concern, with increased rainfall and river flow straining natural flood defences. I hope members of this Parliament will continue to support this programme, but with a large number of my colleagues standing down at the next election, I would encourage any future members to become a nature champion and advocate for a stronger environment that will benefit us all.
Thank you, Mr Beattie. Now call Alexander Burnett to be followed by Christian Graham, around 3 minutes.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I can also commend John Mason for bringing this debate, but also the work of Scottish Environment Link, not just for selecting MSPs, but also the support they give to MSPs with their particular species. And no measure of their success was at the event last year that I have the pleasure of sponsoring on their behalf, where I believe we had over 100 MSPs. Now, I started off life as the champion for the freshwater pearl mussel, now getting its second mention of the evening, which I inherited it from Mary Scanlon, and I'm sure Audrey Dickel is looking after that species as well as the pair of us. But I'm not sure if promotion is the right word, but I'm now the champion for the red squirrel, which, if nothing else, is certainly more photogenic. And understandably is one of Scotland's most iconic species, given that we have 80% of the UK's red squirrel population. But that's a population which has declined by about 90% over the last 150 years as grey squirrels have sort of taken over, and no more so than in Scotland. But we do have a chance in Aberdeenshire of actually being able to eradicate the grey squirrel. Some well-intentioned individual, no doubt at the time, took some grey squirrels from the Central Belt and released them in Aberdeen, where they then spread out along the Dee and the Don. So over the years, the last decade, we have had successful projects of trapping squirrels, grey squirrels that is, and being able to push them back into Aberdeen. So we do actually have a chance to actually remove grey squirrels and give red squirrels the best opportunity of surviving. Because grey squirrels carry squirrel pox, a terrible disease, but they also compete with the reds for food and habitat. Now, I won't go into my culinary skills, which are already on the official record of serving up grey squirrel, but I would just urge people to do whatever they can to help the organisations such as Scottish Wildlife Trust and Saving Scotland's Red Squirrels project in doing things like trapping, but also reporting sightings. It was Red Squirrel Appreciation Day just last month on the 21st of January, which also marked a milestone of nearly 250,000 recorded sightings. So everyone can play a part in helping this particular species. But to continue Imbil good work, they do need reliable funding cycles. They also need a new Scotland strategy for red squirrel conservation, as the current one is just drawing to a close. And we could also see improvements to the forestry grant system to better support grey squirrel control. So I'll just end by wishing Nature Champions Initiative every success for the new parliamentary session, and I hope we can see improved support from the next government to protecting our red squirrels. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Burnett. I now call Christian Graham to be followed by Edward Mountain. Around 3 minutes, Ms Graham.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I thank the member for this debate. As an endangered species myself, I'm grateful to be species champion for the once endangered golden eagle, and even have the South of Scotland Golden Eagle project in the Tweed Valley in my constituency. From 2018 to 2024, 28 juvenile chicks were legally moved from the Highlands to the south of Scotland, establishing a population now of 48 to 50 birds, thriving because of the terrain, supply of food and the protections. I visited the secret location where the chicks develop into full-blown adults, released in stages onto platforms for food, returning initially to their camouflage container homes until they choose to fly free for good. Escorted by experts, you approach across fields silently with a tub of fresh kill to the containers. Solid on your side, with grid walls on the other facing the hills where the birds can scope their future territories. Wearing a gauntlet for protection, there's a small leather flap in the side of the container for you to present the fleshy morsels to the chicks. As I did so, this huge bird turned away from those hills and briefly stared at me and the food, in that order. To say I was taken aback by the size of that chick is an understatement. It was enormous. More scary was the predatory look it briefly gave me. I was indeed coming face to face with the eye of its ancestor, the dinosaur. But what a privilege and what a thrill. I commend that project to anyone coming in once I've retired. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Graham. I now call Edward Mountain to be followed by Fulton McGregor, around 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. And I stand to speak on behalf of the Atlantic salmon, Salmo salar. And I'd like to thank John Mason for bringing this debate this evening, and the Scottish Environmental Link for giving me the chance to represent this wonderful fish. It would be wrong if I didn't register my interest in this debate, in the sense that I've been involved in trying to manage salmon fisheries for nearly 50 years and been trying to catch them for about the same amount of time. Now, interestingly, Christine Graham got the species that I was hoping to get. I don't begrudge her that. And I'm very grateful to be able to support the salmon. And I want to talk about it a little bit because it is one of the reasons why many people flock to Scotland. They come here to not only try and catch salmon, but engage in all the activities that Scotland produce, whether it's producing the great food and drink, the whisky, or other facilities that we found around Scotland. A huge amount of anglers come to all the rivers and generate over £100 million worth of income to Scotland every year. Now, as I said, Presiding Officer, I will, when I move into retirement at the end of this session, spend a lot more of my life hopefully involved in trying to help salmon as well as catching them. There are huge threats to the salmon population. Climate change, whether it be floods or drought, predation, seals up the River Dee, as we heard today, and to me, aquaculture. And I'm going to concentrate just on two of those issues this evening. One is water. And can I just say that I believe the Scottish Parliament will have to consider water. It is becoming a diminishing resource in Scotland. And to allow abstraction from one river to another river catchment, which means that those rivers are drying out, is not a good place to be. We're abstracting water, for example, from the Spey and putting it down to the Tay and also down to Fort William to generate electricity. The result is that the rivers are drying up, the stones are heating up, water temperatures are getting worse in the river. And it's not just salmon that are dying, it's freshwater mussels. And at the other end of that, we see flooding, increased flooding over a short-term periods. And I've seen parr and smolts washed out across the river when they should be living in the river because they've been washed out. I have to mention, Presiding Officer, briefly aquaculture. We need to see a huge change, in my mind, on aquaculture. We need to see pens removed from migration routes for salmon. We need to see a driving down of sea lice numbers, and I know the government's working hard on that. And we also need to see a reduce in the disease. And it will be up to the aquaculture industry to rise to those challenges. But I would too, like all the other members, encourage future MSPs to become involved with this. And don't be put off if you can't get the species you want. Find one that you can represent, stand up, fight for them, learn all about them, and do the best you can in the Parliament. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Mr Mountain. I call Fulton McGregor to be followed by Lorna Slater, around 3 minutes.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And like others, I'm very grateful to John Mason for securing this debate and for his long-standing commitment to this cause. The Nature Champions Initiative is now one of the most successful examples of collaborative politics in this Parliament. Since 2013, it's grown into an award-winning model of engagement that has now been emulated across the UK, and it's a testament to its impact that more than 100 MSPs, as others have said, have stepped up as champions during this session alone. I really enjoyed John Mason's opening speech, where he brought quite a lot of good humour into the debate. But as well as the light-hearted side of it, we must be clear about why such advocacy is necessary. Scotland's nature is in a state of quiet crisis. currently ranked 212 out of 240 countries for biodiversity and Agnus. The decline in species abundance is not a distant threat, it's a current reality, with 1 in 9 of our species now at risk of national extinction. So I'm very pleased. Everybody's been talking about all the various species that they're champions for. I'm very pleased to be the species champion for the great crested newt. And the reason for that, the reason that I'm very pleased is, well, not only because it's a fantastic species, but also because the largest colony of the great crested newt in Scotland is in my constituency and in Gartcosh. Indeed, that is why the Gartcosh Nature Reserve was established, was to protect this species. I've been in various visits with Frog Life and the team there to see the great crested newt, but we didn't actually get to see any because they're very shy animals. And I've taken my wee boys down a few times and we've went looking as well. He was very interested in finding the newt, but we actually haven't found any. But they are there. We've seen the pictures today, Mr Mason, that they are indeed there at Gartcosh. But Gartcosh Nature Reserve is a fantastic walk, so anybody who is ever wanting a wee day out with family or just for a walk themselves, please do try and come along. But on a serious note, protecting these green corridors, as they're called, in post-industrial landscapes is just as critical as protecting any remote wilderness. This unique site at Gartcosh demonstrates how biodiversity can flourish alongside urban development when managed with care and expertise. The success at Gartcosh is a credit to the hard work of Frog Life, who of course sponsor the great crested newt, and North Lanarkshire Council and the local people who enjoy the colony, and it continues to thrive. The role of a nature champion is to turn abstract policy into a personal mission, ensuring that unseen parts of our environment have a dedicated voice in the heart of our democracy. And I hope that I do my small part in that any time I'm driving by it with the kids. I've already mentioned my 2 boys. My wee girl's now getting to age as well. I always say that in there is the great crested newt. So I hope I do my wee part. And I just wanted to say as well, in the previous parliamentary term, I was the champion for the natterer's bat, which I enjoyed being as well, and learned a lot about that species. But like others have said today, I would encourage all returning and new MSPs to become involved in this project going forward. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Mr McGregor. Before calling the next speaker, I am conscious of the number of members who still want to participate. Therefore, I am minded to accept a motion like notice under Rule 8.14.3 to extend the debate by up to 30 minutes. And I would invite Mr Mason to move such a motion.
Move, Presiding Officer.
Thank you. The question is that the debate be extended by up to 30 minutes. Are we all agreed? Parliament is agreed. And I call Lorna Slater to be followed by Finlay Carson in 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Well, I can give some more intelligence to the Chamber on the Golden Eagle saga. When I was first elected to this Chamber, I moved very quickly, and I was lucky enough to be the species champion for the Golden Eagle. And in this role, I was also invited to the Moffat Eagle Festival and even got to be taken to the secret Golden Eagle release site that Christine Graham alluded to in her speech, and see behind the scenes how Golden Eagle reintroductions work. However, once I was appointed the Minister for Biodiversity, it was felt that I should support all endangered and threatened species, and I had to, as it were, release the eagles. In April 2024, I once again had the opportunity to be a species champion, only to find that Christine Graham had gotten in there and grabbed the golden eagles in my absence. So, I am delighted to say that I am now the species champion for the endangered northern damselfly, which in the UK can only be found in the Highlands. This species is restricted in the UK to sedge-fringed lochans, which means small ponds with sedges, reeds and grasses around the edges. For the last 2 summers, my husband and I have volunteered on the SSSI for northern damselflies at Tom Bain Farm in Perthshire, where invasive Sitka spruce trees are encroaching on the damselfly ponds. We enthusiastically, if amateurly, have a go at cutting down these trees and dragging them away from the ponds. Although neither of us is qualified to use a chainsaw, we have to use small hand tools to do so, and we can clear away the smaller trees in this way. This allows us to give space and light back to the damselflies. At the same time, since the farmers have put up deer fences and shot out their deer, we are able to identify and protect the seedlings of native trees, which are now able to regenerate: Scots pine, oak, birch and rowan, hoping to one day have a thriving Caledonian pine forest at the top of the hill. Gordon and I have a competition each year to see who can locate the most tiny baby pine trees in amongst the moss and grasses. And Chamber, he always wins. But I'll put it on the record that it is because he wanders off up the hill to look for them while I'm sawing and dragging away trees at the ponds. And he's not here to contradict me, so there we are. When we sit down to take a break, it is absolutely magical to see the colourful damselflies zooming about over the ponds and resting on the reeds and grasses. There is a real danger to our rare wildlife and habitats in Scotland from self-seeding Sitka, which spread from commercial tree plantations onto sensitive habitats, and a real question as to who should pay to undo the damage that is being done. We've got a lot to do to protect northern damselflies and to improve and restore their habitats. And I'd like to thank the British Dragonfly Society and everyone else who works very hard for this beautiful species. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Slater. I now call Finlay Carson to be followed by Graham Simpson in around 3 minutes. Mr Carson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and thank you, John Mason, for bringing this debate to the Chamber. If truth be told, I've been saddled with many titles over the years, some complimentary, some less so. The knighthood and the trip to Holyrood or Buckingham Palace, I suspect, are somewhere in the pipeline. However, one title I'm genuinely proud of, particularly given my strong links to Stranraer, is being the native champion for nature champion for the native oyster bed. It's a role of value enormously, not just because I'm one of the few nature champions who is able to sustainably eat what my habitat produces, because my constituency is home to one of the most important native oyster beds anywhere in Europe. Beneath the waters of Loch Ryan lies Scotland's last wild commercially harvested native oyster bed, a site of exceptional ecological and national significance. Native oysters are remarkable ecosystem engineers. Each oyster can filter around 200 litres of water per day, improving water quality and supporting the health of the marine environment. They also act as an important blue carbon store, with studies showing that the oyster habitat can hold up to 17.9 tonnes of carbon per hectare per year. Despite dramatic declines elsewhere across Europe caused by overfishing, habitat loss and disease, the Loch Ryan oyster bed has thrived thanks to generations of sustainable stewardship. Its disease-free, genetically strong population makes Loch Ryan a vital source for stock for restoration projects across Scotland and a true jewel in my constituency. This work is increasingly being supported by wider environmental initiatives, including the Solway Coast and Marine Project, which brings together scientists, local communities, the fishing industry and conservation partners to restore and protect the habitats that underpin coastal health. Oyster recovery is centre to this work, but so too is restoring and protecting David Torrance's seagrass meadows that sit alongside many of our oyster beds. Seagrass, as we've heard, is one of the most effective natural carbon sinks in the UK and provides crucial nursery habitats for fish and invertebrates. Healthier oyster beds improve water clarity, allowing more sunlight to reach the seabed, which in turn enables seagrass to grow and thrive. What an unlikely team, Torrance and Carson. But together, oyster beds and seagrass acts as powerfully as nature's tools for improving biodiversity, water quality and climate resistance. A major example of what this kind of restoration can achieve is the historic return of native oysters to the Firth of Forth after more than a century. The project will see 30,000 oysters reintroduced, creating a new reef that will support marine life and improve water quality. As the Scottish Parliament's nature champion for oyster beds, I wish the initiative every success and hope it mirrors the remarkable achievements of Loch Ryan, one of the country's largest and healthiest native oyster beds. No celebration of these achievements would be complete without mentioning the Stranraer Oyster Festival, running from the 11th to the 13th of September and drawing around 30,000 visitors each year. Is a vibrant showcase of our marine ecology, heritage and, of course, outstanding food. And I know the Cabinet Secretary will concur, having visited on at least one occasion, that the wonderfully welcoming folk of Stranraer will ensure you have the time of your life.
Thank you, Mr Carson. I now call Graham Simpson to be followed by Mercedes Vialba. Around 3 minutes, Mr Simpson.
Well, thank you very much. Can I also thank John Mason for bringing this debate to the Chamber? I think it's always the best debate, probably the best debate of the year, because so many people want to take part in it. And I've really enjoyed listening to other members, and I'm delighted that I'm going to be followed by Mercedes Vialba, who is going to tell us all about what she's done for Scotland's road verges. I can't wait. In the last session of Parliament, I was a species champion for the holly tree, and obviously it was decided, probably quite rightly, that I didn't do enough for the holly tree. So I was ditched from the holly tree, and this session I championed the ash tree. And I was determined that I was going to do better for the ash than I did for the holly tree. So I've asked a number of questions about ash trees, 6 in the last year. I asked about the funding cut for the Future Trees Trust breeding programme for Scottish provenance ash. I've asked about ash dieback recovery plans by councils. I've asked about the link between increases in plant imports and the rise of tree diseases like ash dieback. And I've asked about the ash dieback risk group. So ash is under threat, but there are some healthy ash trees out there. I've got to be honest, my experience of ash trees has been a bit mixed. It has. In August 2023, a group of species champions went on a trip to Scotland's rainforest by Loch Lomond. And we took the boat over to the rainforest, and we were walking through the rainforest, and somebody pointed out, up a bank, there is a big ash tree, the biggest ash tree I've ever seen. And so, as a man who likes to get his boots muddy, I was determined to go up and hug the ash tree, which I did, with Monica Lennon and Mark Ruskell, and we joined hands. And we hugged the ash tree. We did. We hugged the ash tree. But the sad part of this story is the ash tree has subsequently died of ash dieback. It's very, very sad. It's a sad story. But there are better examples. The Argyle Street ash in Glasgow is currently the UK Tree of the Year. And I went to see it last week because it's in the running to be the European Tree of the Year. And I encourage everyone to vote for the Argyle Street ash. And I just need to mention my other species. I know I'm up against it time-wise. My other species is the magnificent bilberry bumblebee, which is hard to find but well worth the effort. And I found more than one during a frankly arduous trek up Ben Lawers with the Bumblebee Conservation Trust in July 2021. It's a great scheme, and I also encourage new members and returning members to get involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Simpson. I would discourage you from embracing the Argyle Street ash for its own safety. I now give the right of reply to Mercedes Villalba. Around 3 minutes, Ms Villalba.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. By popular demand, I rise to advocate for the vital and exciting habitat of road verges. Vital because they provide refuge for all manner of plants, animal, fungi and insect species, and exciting because taken together, road verges cover almost 200 square kilometres. That's an area the size of the city of Aberdeen, which is a huge opportunity for species restoration. Now, damaging changes to land management over the course of the 20th century has meant that roadside verges have become a last refuge for some of Scotland's most threatened plant and insect species. Species which are being driven to extinction at a faster rate than that of other higher-profile mammal and bird species. So I am proud to advocate for this habitat. Now, this matters because it will have a significant impact on pollinators and food chains, lower crop yields, poorer quality, higher prices, fewer producers, and greater food insecurity for us all. But properly managed road verges can help address some of the imminent threats our species and ecosystems face. Targeted actions which support species and habitats can have a positive chain reaction, restoring species, strengthening habitat health, and improving our environment for the benefit of us all. So with that, Deputy Presiding Officer, I advocate and strongly encourage everybody to visit their local road verges. Thank you.
An offer you cannot pass up, surely. I now invite Mary Goujon to respond to the debate, Cabinet Secretary, around about 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I don't know quite how to follow that one, but I hope I can do it justice. Firstly, again, just like others, I want to thank John Mason for, I think, shining a light on this really important initiative, and also thank Scottish Environment Link for their work in developing it, and also for all the support that they provide to MSPs throughout it. I'm really delighted to take part in this debate on Nature Champions initiative. First of all, to hear about all the great work that's been done by MSPs from across the chamber, but also because I just genuinely love these debates. And I'm actually covering this debate for Gillian Martin, who I know also would have loved to be here. But I'm delighted to cover it, not least so I can reflect back on one of the most memorable contributions to the Nature Champion debates that we've had in previous years, which was, in fact, Gillian's, where she really shed light on her early goth days and how apt this was for her, as she was then champion for the yew tree. But the thing with that debate was, and when that was mentioned, I couldn't quite remember when it was. Turns out it was from 2017, and it was actually my members' debate at that time. Because at that time, I was the species champion for the hen harrier. And as I said then, I really didn't know what I was letting myself in for with that. But as it turns out, it was such an incredible experience. Just as others have described with their champions, the species that they're championing tonight, it really opened my eyes and brought my focus to that vital species. It took me right across Scotland, through the marshes, up in the hills, and fortunately getting to experience this incredible bird up close. But I also have to say, thinking back to that debate that took part in 2017, another standout contribution from that was from Christine Graham. And I think, as ever today, she didn't disappoint. Similarly dramatic, though at that time, I think the drama was in relation to the house sparrow as opposed to the golden eagle today. And I think just in terms of some of the other contributions, John mentioned some of the MSP's nature champions who could potentially predate other nature champions. But in Graham Simpson, I think we potentially have the first example of a cross-party killing of one of the species. So I hope he's been able to make some reparations for the damage that he and others in this chamber have clearly done to the species in that time. But I think our discussion of this tonight, I think, has come at such is really timely, actually, given that just 2 weeks ago, as Sarah Boyack touched on, the Natural Environment Bill successfully passed Stage 3, because that was a real milestone in our commitment to restoring and regenerating the nature of Scotland. And I think, as everybody here will be aware, that groundbreaking legislation requires us, for the first time, to set statutory targets for nature, and those nature targets are going to form a central part of our strategic framework for biodiversity, and crucially they'll ensure that clear accountability and coordinated action across government too. Now, as the Nature Champion initiative demonstrates, we also need to be taking action to protect our precious species and habitats. Now, just last year we launched our first Nature 30 sites, and that's going to be a key step in delivering on our commitment to protect 30% of our land and seas for nature by 2030. We have 4 pioneering sites now recognised across Scotland: Loch Arkaig Pine Forest, the Findhorn Hinterland, Lochwood and Knapdale. And these sites will play a vital role in promoting that ecological restoration and management at scale in Scotland. Now, we are also investing in our nature, and we've heard tonight, I think, about just how important the financing of some of these critical initiatives is for our species. Now, the groundbreaking Nature Restoration Fund has already invested over £65 million in projects across Scotland. Now, the fund is delivering real impact, and it supports a wide range of innovative projects across Scotland. So, for example, among the already successful projects is Highland Amphibians Reptile Project, which has boosted the survival rate of the Highland Great Crested Newt from 2% to 13%. And this breeding success enabled the translocation of the UK's rarest newts, which is thought to be a first in Europe. So I hope that Fulton McGregor, who's the nature champion for the Great Crested Newt, will be delighted to hear that. And across Scotland, we are restoring nature and iconic species species, not as government acting alone, but also by working hand in hand with communities, land managers and conservation partners. Now, our work to protect red squirrels, which Alexander Burnett touched on tonight, also demonstrates the power of partnership. He also mentioned the really vital initiative, Saving Scotland's Red Squirrels programme, and that's with government, volunteers and landowners, where we're working together to control grey squirrels, limit the spread of squirrel pox and safeguard one of our most iconic native mammals. Now, in turning to golden eagles that Lorna Slater and Christine Graham touched on tonight, in the south of Scotland, the return of golden eagles is one of our most inspiring success stories, and there's been so much vital work that's taken place there, and great to see that success. Now, but of course, this isn't just about our terrestrial species. We've had so many contributions tonight from various members, whether that's from David Torrance and Seagrass about our marine species, Douglas Ross and the bottlenose dolphin, Beatrice Wisher and the orca, and of course Finlay Carson. I welcome the focus on the native oysters, as well as taking the opportunity to highlight the Stranraer Oyster Festival. So I've been able to see some of the work that's gone into that firsthand, as well as then enjoy the product of some of that work later on at the Oyster Festival, which really is just such a fantastic experience, and I would absolutely encourage people to go and visit that if they get the opportunity. And then finally, I would just touch on another really important contribution, which was from Edward Mountain tonight, and the focus on our iconic wild salmon, and recognising some of the pressures that are facing our wild salmon at the moment. And of course, as I set out in response earlier today, we have a number of pieces of work that are underway, really to try and address the different pressures, of which we know there are a number, which are impacting on that iconic species. So, in drawing to a close, Presiding Officer, I think while we are making progress, there is, of course, clearly much still to be done, and I think that's why it's important now more than ever that we keep the nature agenda firmly in the spotlight. There is still so much to do to raise its profile, to strengthen wider understanding, and to ensure that nature remains at the heart of our national priorities. So I very much welcome the discussion that there has been today and the spotlight that the Nature Champions initiative puts on our biodiversity and iconic species in Scotland. And while I won't be here in the next Parliament, and other members across the Chamber have highlighted that too, like other members, I hope it continues with a new set of parliamentarians in the next session who are willing to give their support to these precious species and habitats. Thank you.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. That concludes the debate. We can all head round to Alexander Burnett's for Grey Squirrel Surprise, and I close this meeting of Parliament.